Sands in the surf. It's March. It's March. How exciting is that? The days are getting longer. The water's getting warmer. The little fishies are starting to bite. That's right. I caught a couple already. This is season 4 of Sands in the Surf. Thanks for watching. We got a great season coming up. I got some really good surprises. For number 1, we're going to be back at the rec center teaching the surf fishing class. If you want to take the surf fishing class, go to the rec center, sign up for it. It's a great little class. Number 2, we're going to do more boat fishing. That's going to be fun. Number 3, we have a sponsor who's going to sponsor us in a fishing tournament, a surf fishing tournament coming up in April. So stick around for that. And we've got, you like chicken wings? I like chicken wings. We've got some chicken wings, a secret Sands in the Surf sauce. Amazing. Muy caliente. It's going to be amazing season. Hey, thank you for watching. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for liking. And thanks for subscribing. There's only one thing left to say. Come on, let's go fishing. All right, first things first, I'm going to give a shout out to my man Owen. Owen is 8 years old. He lives down off of 10th Street, and he passed up sweets to watch his favorite video, Sands in the Surf. So Owen, thanks for watching, man. All right, tip number 1. Understanding what fish are in the water based on water temperature. Look at this chart. Right now, the water temperature is between 60 and 65 degrees. So the fish that are going to be in the surf are your puffer and your whiting. Now, knowing that information helps you pick the right hook and the right bait to target your species. Later on, when it warms up and you're getting bluefish or you're going for pompano, you might change the size of the hooks. You might change the type of bait you're using so you can target your species better. So it's a great chart to understand. All right, number 2. Walk the beach at low tide and look for structure. Right there in the middle is a nice, I'm going to call it a hole. It's a deep pocket of water right there, and then it's lower on either side. And that hole right there is where small bait is going to be in, and then the big bait are going to come into that hole to try to catch a small bait. So if you walk the beach at low tide and you find a hole like that, come back at high tide and fish that hole. And that hole just happens to be 9th Street. And the next day, I went back at 9th Street and I fished that hole. And I dropped my line. And now this was right at the beginning of March, and it was still a little cold, but I still got a puffer. We talked about the temperature, so that water probably was about 58 degrees at the time, and I still got a puffer, and I was pretty excited about it. Now I've seen a lot of people are catching a lot of puffer, and it's one of my favorite fish, so I would definitely recommend you try to get out there with some shrimp, some small hooks, and catch some puffer. Now I've fished it for a little while, but the way the water temperature's been and the air temperature, there's been the fog rolling in like crazy, so I had to just pack it up for that day and leave. It was just getting too foggy. So I waited a couple days and the fog lifted. Hey, so I decided to go fishing one day after school around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I went down to 10th Street just because it's close to my house. I didn't pick out any structure. But the tip I used here, and I'm going to tell you about, is getting some fresh bait. Getting the freshest bait you can possibly get. So I stopped and I picked up some fresh shrimp. So as opposed to using frozen shrimp, right? So if you can only get frozen shrimp, use frozen shrimp. But if you can get fresh shrimp, use fresh shrimp. And if you can get live shrimp, use live shrimp, because that's going to be your best bet. And I did manage to catch a couple of whiting, which is a great little fish, but they're very slippery, and that's why my catch and release right here. He was only about 10 or 11 inches. I like to keep him at 12. That's like my favorite size. Once they get to be 12 inches or bigger, they're nice and plump and fat. Now you can keep them smaller than that if you want, but that's just a cutoff for me. You can make up your own rules there. One thing about winter fishing is it's slow sometimes, even in the spring, and sometimes the bite's on and sometimes it's not, and sometimes you're just standing there. But when it is on, it can be really good. Now I'm going to add another tip here. I decided to use even smaller hooks than I've used in the past. I started using number one. I've used 1/0 hooks in the past. I'm using number 1 hook, which is smaller than a 1/0, and I'm using a 4-ounce weight because the surf actually doesn't look rough there, but it kept pulling my line to the side. So I find using smaller hooks, bigger weights kind of helps out a lot when you're fishing for these guys. A big fish can eat a small hook and get hooked on it, but a little fish can't eat a big hook. So I kind of feel like it's just always best to go on the side of smaller than bigger, unless you're trying to get a shark, and then you need a big hook. So believe it or not, the fog did start rolling in again. Can you believe this? It's just the weather. It's that temperature and the water temperature. So I kind of had to pack it up and get out of there. let me tell you about my new gig. Here's a tip for you. If you don't know much about fishing, you can take a tour. And you can go on a fishing charter. And one of the fishing charters that's out there is Tour H2O. And I am going to be a boat captain for Tour H2O this summer. How exciting. So come on, book a trip with Captain Ian Sands on the Tour H2O. I went out this day. We were just down in Ocean Isle, actually. They were showing me the pontoon. They made me drive it. How, stressed out can I be just to get on the boat for the first time with a bunch of experienced captains and be like, hey, drive the boat, Sands. I was like, all right. But they were just taking me out and showing me some of the places they show the tourists when they come down. And there were some dolphins in that last scene right there. So we saw some dolphins. We got to see some of the dredging stuff that's going on there, some of the restaurants in the area, some of the shrimp boats. And these guys are so full of information. They know so much history about the islands, about Charlotte, about Ocean Isle, about Southport and Oak Island, of course, and Holden Beach as well. So you might want to get out there and take a tour. Come on. Next tip, in the cold weather like this, get yourself some waders. I had a pair of these for a couple of years, and they got a little hole in them. They started filling up with water. So I went and I bought a new pair, and they were only like $35 or something online, and they fit really good, and I put them on, and they keep me nice. When you want to wade out a little bit, they keep you nice and dry, which is important. As opposed to, I saw people swimming the other day. I saw girls in bikinis and boys without shirts on in the water swimming around. That water is still only 60-something degrees. They must be crazy. All right, here's another tip for you. This, my friends, is a croaker. Not my favorite fish. Some people like to eat them. I don't. I find them kind of a pain in the butt. And what I've noticed about croaker is if you run into one croaker, you will run into more croaker, and they will swarm your line. So my tip right now is if you start hitting croaker after croaker, do two things. Either try casting out further or closer, more likely don't cast so far, or pick up and move down the beach. And that's what I did in this situation. I just was like, I'm hitting a bunch of croaker. I'm just going to get my gear. I'm just going to move 20 feet down the beach and fish over there a little bit and see if it changes. And if it didn't, I would have kept moving down the beach until I could get away from the croaker and start getting some fish I'm looking for. Another tip, you just want to put this in your head for right now, is knowing the tides. Is it high tide? Is it low tide? Is the tide coming up? Is it going out? Is it a slack tide? Knowing this information can be really important as to how you fish, where you fish, the fish you catch even. I'm going to do a whole video about the tides coming up, but I just wanted to put that out there, kind of put it in your head, start thinking about it, and start understanding when you go fishing, what's the tide doing? Another tip you can do is you can go to Oak Island Surf Checks. It's Surf Checks, all one word with an X at the end of it. And you can see the pier cam, and you can actually look at the waves and see how big they are, how rough the surf is before you even go down surfing. So check that out if you get a chance. Now, if you get hungry after all that fishing, go down to Tranquil Harbor, get some chicken wings, and ask for the Sands in the Surf sauce. Yes, my own sauce. It's super hot, but it's not on the menu. You got to ask for it by name. We're here at Tranquil Harbor. We're going to try the Sands in the Surf sauce tonight. I'm scared. I'll have 12 of the wings with the Sands in the Surf sauce.
You want to sign that you'll be sign the waiver?
Sign the waiver. Oh no.
He made sure that they were everything you said last time. The sauce is on top this time.
I'm rolling up my sleeves now. When you're fishing, you're not allowed to roll up your sleeves because you won't catch fish if your sleeves are rolled up. But with the hot wings, we don't need to get the hot sauce all over our sleeves. Are you ready? I mean, a little heat. The glasses are fogging up. I don't need this, just went down my throat.
Will you put a crab dip?
The flavor is amazing. Forget the heat. Just the flavor of it is so good. It's like,
Never mind, I got it.
I don't know, it's like, I just can't talk. We'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is our house-made wing sauce. Got a little heat to it from ghost pepper, a little capsaicin extract.
Sand and surf. Sand and surf.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. All right, we're going to wrap up this video talking about a little boat fishing. So we got on the boat. My brother-in-law was in town and my sister-in-law, and he wanted to go out fishing. And so I was like, all right, we're going to go out on the boat and we're going to go catch the whiting because there's a whiting run going on right now. We went over to the Cape Fear. Now look at the map. The bottom is Bald Head Island. Over to the left is Caswell Beach, and above that is Southport. Now, a lot of times this time of year, you'll see boats right here off of Caswell Beach, and they'll just be lined up as they were last Sunday when we went out. There was all kinds of boats just right there off the beach. Now, I also think you probably could go fishing off of Caswell right there too. I've fished there before for bluefish, but what we decided to do was kind of just anchor up right outside of the channel. There's some range marker towers there, and the channel goes from over 50 feet, and all of a sudden it just rises up to about 25 feet, and that's where I stopped the boat. And we just dropped out some simple double drop rigs with the fresh shrimp, and it wasn't long before we were just catching mullet after mullet. I guess they come in this time of year to spawn, so they come into the Cape Fear channel there, and they just gather up like crazy. And every time you drop your rig, it didn't have to wait long, and they were just on. Now, some of them were a little bit smaller than I wanted to. Maybe the guys that were over by the Bald Head were catching bigger ones. Maybe that's why there were so many boats over there. There was no other boats where I was by the markers. I don't know why. We were still catching them left and right. So first we were throwing them back because they were only like maybe 10, 11 inches. And I said earlier, I like to keep them over 12. And I'm like, we kept catching like these 11-inch ones, and I'm like, we're never going to keep any of them if we don't start putting some 11 inches in the cooler there. But still, I was like, nah, I don't know. We got to throw them back. So we fished for a while, and then finally I was like, no, I'm not doing it. But look at this. I had one on the line. I had to hand my brother-in-law the line so I could get the other line because I had one on both. So we each pulled in one. So we were just pulling them in left and right. As soon as we dropped it down, like I said, they were coming up and biting it. So a really good time. If you can get on a boat and you can get out there and you want to catch some whiting, now in March is a great time to do it. You can do it in the surf, but this was like much faster, a lot of action. So this one's not too bad. So this is what I decided. I'm going to keep a couple of these like 11 inches right here. Not as chunky as I would like to have them, but this one's not bad either. So I decided we're going to put a couple of these in the cooler. We ended up putting about 6 in the cooler and taking them home and making some really good fish tacos. So that was fun. So anyway, like this guy here, he's going in the cooler. So we got a couple in there. This last one I doubled up on. I thought I had 2 whiting, but the bottom one turned out to be a wheatfish, or some people call him gray trout, but he was too small, so I was going to have to let him go. But watch this great catch and release here. Good thing he was too small. Goodbye, fish. Thumbs up.
2 thumbs up.